Nebraska suffers defeat for the first time this season at the hands of arch rival Creighton, losing 89-60. Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Scarlet Shootaround podcast. My name is Blake, here with co-host Mike, and I want to welcome in all of our new viewers that have joined us since the Creighton episode release. I think it quadrupled our play total on all the podcasting sites, Apple Music and Spotify, and those types of things. So I want to welcome all of you into our show. Thank you for listening and thank you for following. We release new episodes after every single game, reviewing what we saw, previewing the next game, and breaking down the Big Ten games that happen in between. So that being said, welcome into the Scarlet Shootaround podcast. Mike, how are you doing today?
It was a tough weekend, honestly, even just Sunday between the Creighton loss. I think I'm out on all my fantasy football now. No shot for playoffs. Florida State getting snubbed from the college football playoff. They took my old Fortnite map away. It was a rough weekend for me. I can't lie, but I think the Creighton loss was the worst of all of them. You know, the excitement going into that game, and then to see just the guys kind of get run off the floor was tough. But I know it happens in basketball. It's not season defining. It's not the end of the world. On to the next one, and we'll see what they do against Minnesota.
And Mike, I think what hurts most about losing this game is, again, understanding that you're going to lose games, right? You're not going to go undefeated, especially when you're Nebraska basketball. But it's not just losing to your arch rival. It's not just having a bunch of hype built into it, but it's losing in the way that they lost. They didn't look like they even belonged on the same floor as Creighton did.
No, and it pains me to say it, but I think Creighton is a really good team. Obviously, they went to the Elite Eight last year. I hate to give them any credit, but they're a real solid team. They have a real distinct offensive identity that I think showed. They moved the ball really well. Obviously, we'll talk about a little more in depth, but they moved the ball really well. They have a defensive identity. They just play really, really sound basketball. They are a really solid team, and Nebraska had a tough night, and that's how it goes sometimes.
So kind of looking into the numbers behind the disaster, Mike, there's not a whole lot of good to talk about. So we're just kind of, I'd probably brush through it here pretty quick, but Tominaga had a good night. He went for 20 and 3. He was the only player for Nebraska that had a relatively good offensive night. He went 8 for 16 from the field, shooting 50%, and made one of his 4 3-pointers. So Tominaga showed up when the lights were bright. Mast played an okay game. He went for 9, 7, and 1, but he was relatively ineffective on offense, only going 3 for 11 from the field and only making 1 of his 5 3-point attempts. And he just couldn't get into a groove, had 2 turnovers. As you continue down the line, Bryce Williams had a quiet night. He had 6, 7, and 2. He didn't take many shots. It felt like he kind of backed off on the offensive end, maybe passed up a couple shots, took the backseat to Casey and Mast a little bit. Lawrence goes for 1, 4, and 2 with 2 turnovers. Didn't make a shot tonight. He had a tough night distributing the ball. And then Alec, he had 6 and 6, 4 offensive rebounds, so did okay on the glass, but missed all 4 of his 3-point shots. Went 2 for 10 from the field. Had 4 turnovers. So it was just a really, really tough night for pretty much everybody wearing red.
Yeah, tough time to have one of your worst shooting performances of the year. Obviously. You mentioned there Alec going 0 for 4 from 3. He actually had as many 3-point attempts as Casey Tominaga, which I'm sure probably isn't in the game plan. But, some of that is maybe Nebraska being forced into tough spots by Creighton. I think they were keyed in on Tominaga. It seemed every time he got the ball coming off a screen, he's getting swarmed by multiple jerseys in blue there and kind of had to force the ball out of his hand. I know they were sagging off Alec pretty heavily too, with Kalkbrenner. So tough lineup for us to end up that way. Poor shooting night, 2 for 22 from 3, good for only 9%. And you're not going to beat pretty much anybody if that's the type of shooting night you're having.
And Mike, Creighton played great defense. I think everybody can acknowledge that. Kalkbrenner had 3 blocks inside, so we were struggling to get anything under the rim, missing short bunnies, missing layups. He's a presence inside, and we knew that. But their defensive set kind of challenged us to shoot threes and try to play their game, and it worked to their perfection because, Mike, we shot 9% from behind the arc.
Yeah, no, shooting 2 for 22, good for, like we mentioned, 9%. They're shooting 14 for 40, 35%. Huskers just had a tough night shooting all around, inside, outside. It was tough to see. And it was real tough to see even, I think Creighton, they went a little bit deeper in their bench than we kind of talked about even. And that's kind of when I saw that, I kind of felt like the game was getting out of hand for us, knowing they're kind of bringing in guys that typically don't get a ton of minutes. That was kind of disheartening to see. I can't lie.
So the other thing that I took away from this, Mike, is Nebraska got killed on the glass. We lost the rebounding battle 48-37 for a -11 margin, and we gave up 22 to Kalkbrenner and Baylor Shireman alone combined. So what's going on with our rebounding? I noticed Gary only had one rebound. I mean, we talked about it pregame that rebounding is going to be very important. Was this just a product of Kalkbrenner and Shireman just wanting it more?
I really don't have an answer for you. I know that the rebounding has been a bit of an issue the last week or two now. A bit of a head scratcher, as we'd mentioned. I felt like that was one of our keys to the game. I mean, I feel like you can say that about any game, is you don't want to get out rebounded, but to be -11, I noticed that weak side rebounding was kind of a problem all game, and I feel like anytime you're playing a team that's going to shoot a lot of threes, that has to be a major focus for you. There's going to be long rebounds on the far side. You have to box out your guy. You got to put a body on him. So real tough rebounding performance. Yeah, I just thought the energy wasn't really there for the Skurs. I mean, even when they had a lead, twice in the first half, we got a 1-point lead here or there, duking it out, but the crowd would get up and they just couldn't get a stop, or maybe it was an offensive rebound for Creighton, it just seemed like Nebraska didn't get a ton of second chances. We had 6 assists is all, compared to 8 turnovers. They had 17 assists. They assisted on over half of their made shots. We only assisted on 25% of ours. So it was just a brutal night overall for the Huskers. I can give you 20 different stats that say that, but at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to.
Now, Mike Shireman as well, he had a Sam Griesel-esque night, comparative to what happened last year, and he just played with fire. 24, 10, and 3. I think he missed his first 4 attempts on the night, but NU had absolutely no answer for what Shireman brought to this game.
Yeah, I mean, the guy attempted 19 threes. I don't know. It's a head scratcher for me. I feel like that's got to be a focus of your game plan if you're Fred Hoiberg. That's their best shooter. They're going to try to get him as many looks, and for him to even have a chance to attempt 19 threes is a little concerning for me as far as defensive coaching. Just didn't have an answer for him. I know he had mentioned in the post-game presser about some of the looks they got and how Nebraska as a team, we like to help a lot, especially on like a baseline drive. So if they were able to get a drive in, we were bringing the help pretty quick, and they were able to pass out of it, swing the ball around the arc and find him or another one of their great shooters for an open look. And it's just tough to watch, honestly, over and over again.
And right when the Huskers started to rally a little bit there, Mike, I think we cut it to like 10 or something at the end of the half. We get a horrible, horrible break with, we fouled. I believe it was their point guard Ashworth shot a 3 with like half a second on the clock, and then we get a technical on top of it. And just it was just such a tough, because even at that point, you probably didn't feel good about our chances, but that really is what kind of put it under the rug.
Yeah, I think if I'm remembering the sequence right, Tominaga had just hit our first 3 of the game, and it was contested. There was 2 guys on top of him. He made a 3, and then they come down to the other end. Bryce Williams leaves his feet on a closeout. I think Ashworth definitely leaned into him. It wasn't a normal shooting motion. I'm also biased, so take that for what it's worth. But yeah, the guy generates 3 free throws, and then Tominaga, frustrated, and throws the ball against the bottom of the backboard and gets teed up for that. So it's 5 free throws with 0.2 seconds left on the clock, and I think he made 4 of them. So went from an 11-point game to a 15, and I know it's only 4 points, but that's kind of backbreaking with, less than half a second left on the clock to give up 4 points, especially after your first made 3. Maybe things go differently, maybe they don't, but it was tough to see, that's for sure.
One other thing I wanted to point out too, not directly related to the basketball itself, but That was, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the worst halftimes that I have ever seen as a Nebraska basketball fan. I don't know who's in charge of that. I don't know who's running the scheduling and the booking for the halftime shows. But for those that weren't there, it was effectively three inflatable dolls running around the court. They're not even dancing. There was just nothing. There was like a blow up snail that was licking the floor for like 10 minutes. I don't know what happened, but I've watched a lot of sports for, the short time I've been on this planet Earth, and I have never seen a halftime show get booed off the court. And that's what happened this past Sunday at PBA. So I just want to make it known that as a representative of the fan base, the halftime shows have got to be better. And that was frankly very, very embarrassing. So just to get that out of the way, I want to close up this recap by stating that you're never as bad as your worst loss, and you're never as good as your best win. So we can't take this too personal. It was one game. It's a long season. We're going to play 30-plus games this year. As I mentioned, nobody's going to go undefeated. And, it sucks that we weren't ready for what our arch rival brought to the table in our own gymnasium with our own crowd. But, this team is not as bad as what showed in that Creighton game. And we're somewhere between what just happened here yesterday and what we put on the court against Oregon State. It's somewhere in between there. Who knows where? Hopefully, whatever point that is on that scale is good enough to get into the dance. Obviously, this game hurts our metrics, but the good side of it is that this game was a very high reward, low risk game, being a quad one game at home. It's not going to hurt your resume at all, and it could have only benefited us. The only thing that sucks is the ego part of it, right? Having to deal with Creighton, shout for an entire year that they beat us by 30. So that being said, putting a bow on it, Nebraska shoots 34% from the field on 24 of 71 shooting, shoot an abysmal 9% from three-point land on 1 for 12, and shoot 71% from the stripe on 10 of 14 and have a 6 to 8 assist to turnover ratio, whereas Creighton shoots 46% from the field on 32 of 69, shoots 35% from three on 14 makes out of a whopping 40 three-point attempts, and they shoot 85% from the stripe on 11 of 13, and they combined to have a 17 assist to 12 turnover ratio. So Nebraska loses 89-60 in a heartbreaker that was never really close. Nebraska learned a lot from it, and we will see you on the other side of it as we get into our Minnesota preview.
You are listening to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast.
So Minnesota, Mike, we are heading up to our first true road game, heading up to the barn up in Indianapolis to play a Minnesota team that's had kind of an up and down start to the year. They are 5-3, checking in at 116 in KenPom. They are preseason picked 14th in the Big Ten by a pretty wide margin. I think in general they were assumed to be the worst team in this conference. Notable wins, they have nothing really too much to speak of, but their best win that they have on the board is that they beat number 284 KenPom. USC upstate 67-53 in a lower scoring affair based on what they've put on in other games. Notable losses, they lost a heartbreaker, as we've mentioned prior, to number 81 KenPom Mizzou 70-68. They lost just their past game, number 24 KenPom Ohio State 84-74, and they lost over in California to number 72 KenPom San Francisco 76-58. So, Mike, what do you foresee here as we head up north for our first road game of the Big Ten season?
Yeah, I think this Minnesota team, I think there's still some work to be done for this team to look like the team Ben Johnson wants to have up there. This team, they like to work the ball around a lot. They're actually 6th in the country in their assists per field goal made, so they're going to pass the ball around a lot. They're going to work it around a lot. I think the offense is going to work inside out, from Dawson Garcia. They got a massive center. He's a great player. I think he's averaging 20 points on the season or something around there right now. So they're going to work it inside out, try to get the ball to some shooters. Excited to see what the Huskers come with as a game plan. Obviously, this team's not nearly as good at shooting the three as Creighton is. They're actually pretty middle of the pack. They shoot 33%. They're actually dead average from beyond the arc compared to what Creighton was. So definitely a different style of play that we're going to see. Excited to see how the Huskers tackle it.
So, Mike, they go about 8 deep in their lineups. Their point guard, a 5'11 junior, Elijah Hawkins, he's averaging 8, 4, and 5. He is averaging 3.1 turnovers a game, so maybe not taking care of the ball quite as well as you'd like to from an on-ball guard. Shooting 34% from the field and 26% from three. He's more of a pass-first point guard. He is a transfer from Howard, so he's trying to take over the reins for that side of things. Another notable guy you mentioned, obviously, Dawson Garcia, their center, a 6'11 junior, averaging a whopping 21, 8, and 2. He's shooting 49% from the field, 28% from three, so he's trying to stretch it out a little bit and add that to his game. He was an all Big Ten honorable mention last year and has 2 double-doubles this year already. His lowest point total being 14 amongst the games that he's played thus far. So, Mike, out of their lineup, who do you kind of highlight and what sticks out to you besides the obvious strength in Dawson Garcia? Excuse me.
Yeah, no, obviously he's the key. You mentioned he was an all conference honorable mention. I think he definitely has the talent to even be second or first team. I know that there's some pretty good centers around the league, but this guy's really, really good. He had 36 points in their game last night in a loss to Ohio State. I think that was literally like half their points. I think they scored maybe 74 total. So, the dude's the centerpiece of the offense. But beyond that, they have 2 pretty good 3-point shooters. I mentioned they don't shoot the ball as well, but there's 2 guys that are above 50%. Cam Christie, he's a freshman. 6'6", he shoots nearly 51.7% from three on 15 for 29. So pretty good volume. He gets quite a few looks. And then they got Joshua Ola Joseph. He's one of their starters. He's 5 for 10 from beyond the arc. So good for 50%, not nearly the volume. So we'll see if that percentage hangs around as he gets more shots up, if they want to give him more shots. Another guy they're going to look to beyond the arc is Mike Mitchell. He's a 6'2 junior. He shoots 35%, so he's probably one of their better 3-point shooters, definitely is. He's actually 14 for 40, so he gets most of their volume beyond the arc. But they have a couple of guys that we're definitely have to key in on, nowhere near like a Shireman level or anything like that. But if we go up against a team and we start getting rained on up there in the barn with some threes with Dawson Garcia kicking it out to wide open shooters, it could make for a long night.
Yeah, and you mentioned Cam Christie there, Mike. He is probably their best dead-eye shooter. As you mentioned, shooting 49% from the field, 52% from three on 29 attempts. Easily their best perimeter threat based on numbers alone. He had 20 points in a game earlier this year against New Orleans off the bench, so he's proven that he can, take shots and be confident taking them. Interestingly enough, he was the 79th overall ranked recruit last year, so a really nice pull for Ben Johnson to get him to join the Gopher program. I imagine he'll be a presence felt in all games Minnesota will play over the next couple of years, assuming obviously in the transfer portal era that they can hang on to him. Another guy, Braden Carrington, a 6'4 sophomore, averaging 5, 5, and 2, shooting 36% from the field, but only a measly 17% from three, and he only has 4 makes out of his 23 attempts. So not a guy. I think you kind of approach him with the idea of if he wants to take a shot, you just let him, and if he makes it, then you just cut your sorrows and you take it for what it is. But one more guy that we kind of talked about, Farrell Payne, a 6'9 sophomore, averaging 9, 5, and 1. And I know Fred talked about him a little bit in his radio show tonight. He's averaging 62% from the field, averaging 2 blocks per game. He's kind of their main rebounder and defender. He can score. He scores a lot of his points on putbacks and that type of thing. So not necessarily a main offensive threat, but somebody that we've talked about in Nebraska's lack of rebounding ability as of recent. So a guy that we're really going to have to key on both ends of the floor when it comes to rebounding.
Yeah, and I'd hope that that's been a big focus here today and tomorrow in these couple of practices for the team, is focusing on the rebounds. If we're giving up easy bunnies or easy putbacks, it's going to make that just that much harder. This isn't a team that you want to stick around with. I mean, that's going to be a classic Big Ten ball. It's going to be a bit of bully ball. It's going to be working the ball inside. We'll see how it works for them. This is a team, though, for Minnesota. They like to turn the ball over a lot. I mean, there's a steal on 14% of the possessions. We mentioned they like to assist the ball out. They're going to move it around. 14% of their possessions end up with a steal, 20% as a turnover period. So, and that's 279th in the country. And they're not going to generate a lot of steals on their defensive end. They only steal the ball, 15, 16% of the time, which is 280th in the country. So if we can get some easy baskets and get some runaways off some steals, some takeaways, I think that'll help the Huskers a lot. I think the Huskers are going to handle business. I hope they bounce back from this big loss to Creighton, and I guess we're going to see what the team's really made of here. How resilient they can be with that first loss of the season, kind of a punch in the mouth.
And I think to that point, this is kind of a gut check game for Nebraska, because I don't think realistically anybody expected to probably beat Creighton by double digits or anything like that, but more of a reality check, and that, okay, we were 7-0, but maybe we didn't play a whole lot of quality teams. Obviously, as diehard fans, you want to think that you're probably better than you are, but Nebraska, again, gets a tough reality check. And the thing that scares me about this matchup, Mike, is that Minnesota is very aggressive on their three-point defense. They only allow the 28th lowest three-point attempts per field goal attempt in the country, and they close out well on the perimeter. So similar to the formula that Creighton's going to use as we go into this one, in trying to prevent the three ball as best they can, providing that they'll give up a low percentage. Do you foresee us more working inside and trying to get after their shot blockers, or are we just going to go back to the well and try to make threes?
For all of our sake as Nebraska fans listening to this, I hope that we don't just try the same formula we tried with Creighton. We saw how well that worked. We had obviously a tough shooting night, and obviously I don't think we're going to shoot 9% from three if we do shoot a lot of threes. But I would like to see, Mass get some work inside. I'd like to see Bryce Williams work the ball inside. I know he's able to do that. He's got inside. He can work at mid-range. I'd like to see them attempt some more twos, work the ball inside, and challenge Dawson Garcia here, because if he gets into foul trouble, if we can manage to somehow get him 2 fouls with 10 minutes left in the first half and they're going to have to pull him, that could be a huge opportunity for the Huskers to go on a big run. So that's what I would look to see personally. Now, that being said, if we come out and we're getting open looks from three, that doesn't mean I want us to pass them up, provided that they're good looks in the offensive system, in the set, and not just, somebody sag. Like, I don't want to pick on anybody too much, but there's a reason Josiah Alec was open for all those threes in the Creighton game. It's because it's not the shot that we want to take. They're happy to let him take that shot. So if we can get some open threes from some guys that we want to be shooting them, I say shoot them. But other than that, I'd like to see us work the ball inside more personally.
So Mike, Ken Palm is projecting a 75-73 Husker win, and Torvik is projecting a 74-72 Husker win. So we will assume that it is a Nebraska -2 spread. What are you going to do with this one in relation to the points?
It's like we said, it's a bit of a gut check here, and it's easy to foresee a chance where the Huskers maybe come out a little flat. But I think that we're a deeper team. I think just talent-wise, we're a better team than they are. I know we kind of didn't play the strongest schedule up until this point, but they've played an even weaker schedule than we have, and they've lost 3 games already. So I like the Huskers in this one. I think they'll win. I'm not sure it'll be double digits. No Big Ten game is easy, especially first one of the season. They're going to bring their stuff. You want to get off to a 1-0 conference start, so I'll lay the points. Obviously, this is not financial advice, but I like the Huskers to win by 5 to 7 points, somewhere in that area, probably.
I'm going to take a little bit of an alternative route and try to not be a homer for once in my life. I'm actually going to take the points with Minnesota. I think this is a bad matchup for us. I think it's our first true road trip. So, I think the team now, granted, we did go to the Pentagon. I think this is a true road environment where I think the home crowd of Minnesota may not be as strong as they've been in years past, solely because the expectations for that program are lower this year. But, are we going to be able to fix our rebounding issues against a team that attacks the offensive and defensive glass very strongly? Are we going to be able to bounce back from a 9%, 3-point shooting 40 minutes and improve on that going into the next game. And, can we do all those things while, again, their strengths are emphasizing what has been our weaknesses in the past couple games? So I'm going to project a final score of Nebraska 70, Minnesota 74. I hope I'm wrong, but I have to look at what my eyes are telling me, and I'm going to predict a Minnesota win here and pray that I'm wrong. So that's our Minnesota preview. We will catch you on the other side of this with our Big Ten roundup.
You are listening to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast.
So, Mike, the Big Ten has just gotten started in their early season 2-game early conference slate. We'll kind of run through some of the major results that happened over this past couple days. Number 48, Ken Palm Northwestern rolls in and beats number 1 AP poll Purdue in overtime, 92-88. You have 3 Northwestern Wildcats scoring the double figures. Boo Buie goes for 31, 4, and 9, and he really took that game over late, scoring the last couple buckets. And Edey goes off for a video game numbers line, 35, 14, and 1. But, he had a couple late turnovers and fouls. But, Mike, I'm going to be honest, in watching the end of that one, it really kind of felt like it was a little bit of an 8-on-5 game with the refs rooting for the home crowd maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch it. It's a massive win for Northwestern, frankly, and maybe this puts the Big Ten on blast a little bit. Maybe the conference is a little more open than we thought. It's saying Purdue's the cream of the crop. Boo Buie, incredible performance. I know people like to talk about, especially when it comes to March, a guard play can get you deep. It'll give you a chance to make a run. But I think even in December, I guess this game took place in November technically, but recording here in December, guard play gives you a chance to beat anybody. And I think that's what we just saw from Northwestern. Incredible win for them. I'm not sure if they can replicate it, but they're always going to be in a game. They're always going to have a chance with Boo Buie around being able to put up numbers like that.
Moving on, number 69, Ken Palm, Indiana handles number 70, Maryland, 65-53. Jameer Young goes for 23 and 2. Reese for 14, 8 and 1. 4 Hoosiers score in the double figures, with Ware going for 18, 14 and 1. Mike, the Terps have kind of shifted to being a defense-first team. I don't know if that's by plan or by design, but again, great win for Indiana. But Maryland, after coming in with some pretty high expectations, they cannot find any offense.
Yeah, I think the sky might be falling a little bit right now in College Park in Maryland. They only shot 12% from 3 this game. As a Husker fan, I know how tough it is to see your team not be able to make a 3. It's brutal for them right now. I'm not sure where their points are coming from. I just don't see what the Terrapins are going to do to fix this problem right now. Obviously, as you said, they've kind of switched it to be a defensive grinded out team, and maybe they can hope to get in a rhythm on the offensive end. But right now, it doesn't look too hot for them. They're probably, fading back in the pack a little bit on the Big Ten in my mind right now.
Continuing on, number 15, Wisconsin gets a huge win over number 7, Marquette, their in-state rival, 75-64. Klesmit goes for 21 points with 5 3-pointers. Wall goes for 10, 7, and 1. They do have a 9 assist to 14 turnover ratio, though, so maybe not taking care of the ball quite as well as they wanted to. But, Mike, what a huge win for the Big Ten in Wisconsin, beating a very highly considered Marquette team.
Yeah, no, I think this Marquette team is really good. I think Wisconsin's better than I thought they were at the start of the season. I think they're playing really well. Chucky Hepburn, I think he's kind of coming into his own here. He had 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 9 points. It's not the craziest stat line, but that's kind of what they ask him to do. It's nothing too crazy. I think the key for me here is Wisconsin was plus 15 on rebounds. With numbers like that, you can shoot poorly if you're going to – I mean, they shot 42% from the field. You can shoot poorly if you're going to be plus 15 on the glass. Maybe that raises questions for Marquette fans. Kolek didn't have his best game. He only went 4 for 11 for the field. So we'll see. I like I said, I think it's a big win for Wisconsin. Obviously helps the Big Ten. Love to see it for them. So at least one team can beat their in-state rival, I suppose.
Oh, just twist the knife. Number 16, Ken Palm, Illinois beats number 63 Rutgers at the hardest place to win in the country at the rack.
The rack.
76 to 58. Shannon goes for 23, 10, and 3. Domas goes for 15, 7, and 2. They have a 12 to 17 assist to turnover ratio. So again, a little bit of a good defensive effort from Rutgers, but they have nobody in double figures, Mike. Omori was held to 7 points and 9 rebounds on 3 of 10 shooting from the field. So Rutgers gets shut down offensively.
Yeah, I think Illinois is kind of looking, they're rising up. If I'm talking about Maryland kind of fading back in my mind, Illinois is looking really good right now. They play some really, really good defense. I know Rutgers might not necessarily be the highest scoring offense out in the country, but to hold it, the whole team less than double digits, pretty incredible. Illinois has got a ton of athletes. They're a really solid squad. I really like them. I like to see how they play too. I think they're just a really solid squad overall. Excited to see what they can do the rest of the conference slate.
And then, Mike, number 127 Penn State loses an absolute shocker to the 330th. You heard that correct. The 330th ranked Ken Palm team Bucknell, 76 to 67. The game was tied at the 3-minute mark, but Bucknell pulled away late. Baldwin, one of their studs, goes for 17, 1, and 3, has 4 steals. Hicks goes for 13, 7, and 2. But Mike, this is a horrible loss, probably the worst loss for the Big Ten so far this season.
Yeah, no, I think Penn State was favored to win by like 20 or 21 or 22, somewhere around there. So to end up losing by 9 to Bucknell, that might be the worst loss period for anybody on the season. Bucknell shot 47% from 3. They shot 58% from the field. I'm questioning Penn State right now, where the defense was. Maybe they just didn't show up for the early 11 a.m. tip, but at any rate, you have to just out athlete them. I think you're going to have better athletes than Bucknell. Terrible loss for Penn State. That's horrible. Yeah, I might need to bite my tongue, because if heaven forbid Nebraska loses to Penn State later in the season, that's going to be even worse for me then. But yeah, no, terrible loss for Penn State. Tough.
Yeah, we'll be keeping both of our receipts from this episode for that Penn State game, God forbid. The number 49 team, Mike, Michigan, rounding it out, loses another absolute heartbreaker to number 47, Ken Palm, Oregon, 86 to 83 in overtime. Michelle Stad for Oregon hits a 28-footer at the buzzer to win the game for them in that overtime period. But the biggest takeaway from this one, Mike, is Doug McDaniel went for 33, 4, and 3 on 12 of 21 shooting and made 7 out of his 12 three-point attempts. This guy can ball.
Yeah, no, he can fill up the bucket. He's a guy that every team's going to have to key in on here on out if they weren't already. He can fill it up. 33 points is an incredible outing. As you mentioned, another tough loss. I think, giving up a buzzer beater 3 in overtime to lose. If they hadn't hit it, it would have gone to double overtime, I guess, anyways. But Michigan, do you think they're kind of getting a little antsy with Juwan Howard? I don't know. They haven't shown what those typical Michigan teams of a couple of years ago looked like. I don't see the fire. I don't see it from them right now, personally.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I think he's done an okay job there. But when you throw in the antics of punching Greg Gard in the face at the conclusion of a basketball game, and you combine that with, them maybe not meeting quite the high expectations that they've had since the Jordan Poole days and making the Final Four and those types of things, it's hard to – I don't have a good pulse on how they feel about Juwan Howard. Again, he's one of their own, so you always probably earn a little bit of an extra leash, as we know with Scott Frost and with Fred Hoiberg to a smaller extent. But it's hard to say. I think Michigan, that they're just an enigma. They've won a couple games. They went to St. John's and dominated as underdogs earlier this year. And then they go lose they compete hard against Oregon, but another tough loss. And at the end of the day, the net rankings, they look at the margin of victory, but they don't really care about that. They care if you won or lost. So it's a tough one for Michigan, but I do still think they're a top 6 or 7 team. And as a matter of fact, I think it's a team that Nebraska, if we plan on making the dance, this is a team that we're going to be battling with for a bubble spot come end of year. So that being said, that rounds up our Big Ten review. The last thing that we had to bring forth is our giveaway winners. So we mentioned in the Creighton episode that we were going to be doing a giveaway, and we have selected those winners. We had, I think, 76 entries or something along those lines. So Really appreciate you guys entering and listening in. So those winners, what we did, we put them into a spreadsheet all based on numbers, and we are going to pick 4 winners out of that 76-person list. And we did that pre-show, and those were Dustin Huber, Ben Simmons Jumper, Connor Hewson, and Zach Jew are the Twitter handles. I don't know everybody's name, but those were the Twitter handles. So I'll make sure that we get you guys sent a message requesting your size, and we'll get those mailed out to you as soon as we possibly can. So that being said, thank you for listening into this episode of the Scarlet Shootaround podcast as Big Ten play starts up. Mike, any words as we start to head into Big Ten play?
Long season ahead of us. I know, like you said, you're never as bad as your worst loss, never as good as your best win. So hope the boys can find some consistency going into conference play. Hopefully they can get off to a hot start here, win a game or two going into the holiday break, and see what they can do coming out the other side in 2024. Excited to see them jostle for position, and hopefully they can make a run at this thing still.
So that being said, thank you for checking in again to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast. We will be back at you again after this Minnesota game for a Michigan State preview, hopefully a day after, somewhere right in there. So we'll keep coming at you as much as we possibly can between the games. So for myself, Blake, and co-host Mike, thank you for listening. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red, baby.